Hello. In this video we're going to look at part 1 of the listening paper in the Cambridge English First for Schools exam. Part 1 is the short extracts task. So for this and the other videos in this sequence, I'd like you to download the PDF and the MP3 files that you'll find linked to in the description below. We're using sample paper 2 as our example, and this begins on page 62 of the PDF. So when you've got those ready, we'll go through the different tasks. So what do you have to do in part 1? Well, you'll hear 8 short extracts, and this will be either people speaking on their own or speaking to a partner. Before each one, it's very important that you read the question carefully. There are a lot of pieces of very important information here. It's not always that you have to listen to what they just say. Maybe the question asks you what somebody dislikes, in which case you might hear what they like first and what they dislike after that. So it's important that you only listen for the information connected with the question. Sometimes you might have to listen to 2 people and see where they agree. And the way they agree might be marked by, for example, the first person says something and the second person says, "Yes, you're right." That might be it. That could be all they say to show agreement. They might then say something else, but the first person doesn't agree or doesn't say anything, and that's not the answer. So we have to be aware of the distractions that can appear. So with that in mind, have a look at the example task. When you're ready, come back and we'll look through the answers together and see what we can learn from this experience. Okay, so you hear an art teacher talking about learning to draw cartoons. And for number 1, what does he say about the lessons he gives? We want the answer A. They will make it easy to do. And he says, whether it's your first time learning how to draw or whether you've got plenty of experience, you'll appreciate my method because I make it seem so straightforward. If something is easy to do, it's straightforward. Okay, and number 2, you hear a boy talking to a friend about butterflies. Now read the question carefully. It says, what does he find difficult? So in other words, what does he think is the hardest thing to do? The answer we want is B, identifying certain butterflies. There is a distraction here. He says, even in the middle of town, they aren't hard to find, which seems like it's connected with locating butterflies in the city, but it's not. He says they aren't hard to find. And it's not even find that we really want, it's what does he find difficult. He says the tricky bit's relating the name to the new one that's in front of you before it flies away. You know, matching up the colours and patterns with the picture in the book. And that gives us the B, identifying certain butterflies. Number 3, you hear a boy talking about a long walk he did to raise money for charity. But it says, what did he dislike about it? So we're going to listen to several things. Some of them will sound negative, but he might not dislike them. So be careful that you don't apply your own opinions to what you hear. If he mentions something that you don't like, it might be that he didn't have any particular feeling about it, and we do get that. He talks about last year's bad weather, and he's glad that they didn't have it this year. So that's clearly not C. C is a distraction. The answer we get is A, being interviewed by the media. Then someone from the local newspaper came to ask me loads of questions. I would have preferred not to have been the one in the spotlight. I'd quite happily have given that bit a miss, to be honest. So he's talking about that part being the thing he disliked. For number 4, you hear a teacher talking to her class. What is she talking about? Now in this question we have to get the general idea, and we have to think about the vocabulary connected with each part of this. And we want the answer C, preparing for a presentation. She mentions homework, she mentions research, but that's not the point of what she's saying. She does say, for this class presentation, that's in the middle, and later you have to make an outline to make sure you cover all the details, then practice what you're going to say using that as your guide. So she's giving information about presentations and how to prepare for one. So we connect these ideas with the presentation to get the answer. In number 5, you hear two friends talking about a competition. How does the boy feel about entering it? So we listen for the boy's opinion. And at the end he says, I'll definitely have a closer look at the competition rules though, and that gives us the answer B. He's interested in finding out more. For number 6, you hear a teacher talking about writing a poem. What does she want her students to do first? So we're going to hear different ideas, but it's the first thing that's crucial. And instead of saying first, she says, I suggest initially. Everyone choosing something from this collection here, the stuff's all by people your own age. So she wants C, for her students to read poems by other teenagers. So we have to listen for that really important information. Then for number 7, you hear two friends talking about a book about a footballer. What do they agree about? The answer is A. It contains surprising information. So we need to listen for that agreement. The first person says, I had no idea he'd had such a tough childhood. And the answer comes immediately after, me neither. And that's it. There's an agreement there. The other things don't count because one person might mention it, but both of them don't. And then finally in 8, you hear part of a program on the subject of animals. What is the presenter doing? So that's the question. So you have to basically listen to the whole thing and try to find the right description for the context. What is the reason? So he does invite listeners to suggest names for an animal, but that's not the reason he's talking. In fact, he is telling us B, information about an unusual species. And we do get that information at the beginning. He says something about celebrating the arrival of a very special creature, a rare onager foal. So that introduces us to what follows. And the whole point of what he says is to give us that information. And that's where we get the answer from. So to summarise then, for the short extracts task, you have to think of words and expressions connected with the question and the possible answers. You have to read the questions themselves very carefully and look for the most important information. And you have to be aware of distractions, where they give you something connected to one of the other answers, but it's not the information you want to get the correct answer. In the next video, we're going to look at part 2 of the listening paper, which is the sentence completion task. So, thank you.